In 1964, I had assigned Robert Anton Wilson to go to Millbrook and interview Tim for a piece he did for The Realist. After it was published, Leary invited me to Millbrook. I had just heard that Leary and his associates had been doing research in LSD and that he had gotten in trouble for it at Harvard.
Millbrook was a wonderful background for anything. The vibration was of excitement, of energy, of new discoveries.
This 3,000-acre estate with this huge 64-room mansion was built by this inventor, Charles Dietrich, who invented the gas lamp, and he brought over 300 stonemasons from Italy to build all these houses of stone.
The woods to roam, the house itself, bridges, turrets, castles, the grounds. The energy level was so high and so innocent in a way, innocent at times of the world outside, until it started to intrude, as of course it did with G. Gordon Liddy's raid.
Your attention, please. Announcing the return of the G. Gordon Liddy Show.
I was, at the time, Assistant District Attorney of Dutchess County, New York. And because I had been a bureau supervisor of the FBI, major case investigations were kind of my bailiwick. And so there was procured from a magistrate a warrant to search the premises for controlled dangerous substances.
We'd been in the bedroom. Jack Leary had just done his homework.
We devised a plan that we would go out there at night after they had all gone to bed.
It's a weekend. We had a house full of visitors.
We would enter the premises and trap them in their rooms, then search them.
And we'd been smoking a little DMT, actually.
We waited and waited, and finally they went to bed.
There was this incredible sound downstairs, and Jackie went to investigate.
And then I learned thing number one, and that is that 14 or 15 helmeted and booted deputy sheriffs cannot sneak. They sounded like a herd of elephants.
And he came flying back up the stairs and said, "There's a bunch of hunters down there."
The first thing we knew, all the doors burst open.
The state troopers burst into the room.
The people came pouring out.
A couple of men with clipboards.
And they were playing banjos and guitars and singing songs. Oh, they're busting Dr. Leary and all that kind of business.
Well, they were so excited. I'm sure they expected to find an orgy going on.
Down came Timothy Leary with his then inamorata. Rosemary was her name. And Rosemary was a very beautiful woman, and she was clothed only in a diaphanous gown.
Liddy claims that I was wearing a diaphanous gown and I was wearing my grandmother's full flannel Christmas present.
Tim Leary was wearing only a Hathaway shirt, period.
Well, I believe that he was wearing a long Indian shirt, actually.
My very first view of Tim Leary as I'm coming up the stairs and he's coming down was spectacular, to say the least.
They herded everyone together. They made me stay in bed, and they trained a spotlight on me.
He had to be forced to put a pair of pants on.
They found old birth control pills in the closet and took them in my fuchsia plant.
We found various vegetable substances and other things.
Rummaged through everything, made a mess of the house, and then photographed the mess that they'd made, which is sort of usual procedure.
Some of which were not any kind of a contraband at all, just vegetable matter, others which, of course, was contraband.
Took Tim off to jail in Poughkeepsie.
And so he was ultimately arrested.
I'm not going to solve these problems by putting leading scientists like myself in jail with 30 or 40-year prison terms. We're doing nothing more than attempting to use and understand these new forms of energy for which yet there's no evidence that we've done any damage to society or to ourselves or to other people.
We went back, had a second search warrant executed, and finally there was this trial. And Tim took the position, and his lawyers took the position, he was defended by the ACLU, that this was all in advance of a religious concept.
The LSD trip is best understood as a religious pilgrimage. The LSD kick is a religious ecstasy. Even the LSD psychosis or the LSD panic is nothing short of a spiritual crisis.
They recruited just about every Swami and Hindu that they could find to testify.
I salute the goddess within you. I salute the God within you.
we came to an agreement. There was a plea bargain, and that was that we would let Tim completely off the hook, but he would clear out of Dutchess County, which is what the good burghers of Dutchess County wanted. And Tim then went to California, for which he told me later on he was eternally grateful that I sent him out there. And I told him yes, and the people of California have never forgiven me since.
First of all, we have to ask the question, what is LSD? LSD is a chemical, but it's not a drug. Most Americans are familiar with two drugs which change consciousness. Drugs which put us into a stupor, drugs which wake us up. Almost every American uses one of these two. We use opiates or tranquilizers or alcohol to put us into a nice, cozy stupor. Or we use drugs like pep pills or even coffee to wake us up. But there are many other levels of consciousness, many other levels of awareness which can be triggered off by chemicals.
He just kept thinking and kept innovating. Even those people who would claim that Timothy Leary had fried half his brain away with all his LSD trips, at the same time acknowledged that the half a brain he might have had left was still a more powerful brain than 99% of the rest of the people in this country or anyplace else.
When I take LSD, and I've taken it over 300 times, I've tried to take it once a week as a spiritual discipline, the way a scientist would use his microscope once a week. What happens when I take it is, and I know this sounds far out, but I talk to my cells. My cells, and after all, I'm a collection of cells. Trillions of cells have been around for hundreds of millions of years, playing out the game of learning.
In these early days, before we administered these drugs to patients, gosh, we had some of the most interesting people alive. Allen Ginsberg came blowing up, and he laughed at, well, you square guys, what do you think? You don't know anything about drugs?
They were a group of psychiatrists who worked at Harvard, and they said I should meet Mr. Leary because I'd talked to them about psychedelics at their Atlantic City convention, and Leary was just doing Harvard studies. It was 1960-ish.
I learned from Allen that all has to do with art, and communication, and poetry, and information, and that sort of music.
Went up there, actually, and tried out the psilocybin. And got very high. I remember taking off all my clothes and coming downstairs with Peter Orlovsky and saying, let's save the world. Leary was very calm about it, though apparently I shocked his children. And the household hadn't seen anybody stark naked before.
Because Allen had come from this long, long tradition. And Allen in my kitchen pulled out his notebook. He's nearsighted. Get Kerouac, oh yeah, get Burroughs, get to go down the list. Hey, we got to turn all these people onto it. So Allen became coordinator, or I became basically the administrator for Allen.
The whole series of experiments that Tim started was with creative artists, and he began to give psilocybin to artists, musicians, people like Allen Ginsberg, and then he introduced us to various poets and then musicians.
Under the auspices of Harvard and very formal permission, academic permission, I thought, well, this would be really interesting to get the poets and painters and musicians together and see how this works with them. So I delivered some to Thelonious Monk, and some a week later, I asked him what had happened. He said, you got anything stronger?
In each case, always the idea was people would be asked to write a report and give feedback so that we would learn from people who were used to exploring consciousness and working in different ways, would creativity be heightened.
And I delivered some to Dizzy Gillespie, saw him in the 5 spot a while later, and asked him how he thought, what he thought. He said, anything that gets you high, man.
We were ready for it, but he's one of the great teachers.